Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements. This is patch 4.0.1, which I'm calling Sim Settlements Lite, or if you're a Conqueror fan, Jammer Unjammed. So I have an interesting situation here. Because Conqueror is completely separate from the code base of Sim Settlements, unlike Rise of the Commonwealth and Industrial Revolution, where all the code was kept in one spot, I kind of need to have patches for each of them, and then you need to have their own patch notes and all that. So we're going to go over how that's going to work going forward. And now hopefully Rick is giving you guys some interesting footage to watch, because I am just staring at the Conqueror startup screen, because that's what I'm going to be talking about here in a moment.
Okay.
But first, let's go over the way patch days are going to work going forward since Conqueror is out now. So essentially, every patch day, which is going to be every other week starting today, is that you will have a patch for Sim Settlements, a patch for Workshop Framework, and a patch for Conqueror, because both Sim Settlements and Workshop Framework are very important to the way Conqueror's code works. So it's almost a certainty I will have to update both of those other mods in order to make substantial changes to Conqueror. So always grab those other two first, and then grab Conqueror. It doesn't actually matter what order you download them in, but if you don't have those updated and just launch with a new version of Conqueror, you're going to have a bad time. And so one of the first changes that Conqueror makes is to now check and make sure that the version of Sim Settlements and Workshop Framework that it expects are installed. And if it doesn't find them, it will warn you so that you can go do those updates before you save over your game. So those three mods will always be updated. So right now you should find that all three have an update available. It would be the 1.1.1 patch for Workshop Framework, the 4.0.1 patch for Sim Settlements, or 3.1, and the 4.0.1 patch of Conqueror. Now, the other thing that Conqueror will do on startup is check and make sure you aren't using Sim Settlements Lite. So those of you on Xbox who didn't get that memo, Sim Settlements Lite does not support Conqueror, does not have the latest code updates, because Sim Settlements Lite was discontinued. The last version is the 3.5.2. And the reason for that is why the patch 4.01 for Sim Settlements is called Sim Settlements Lite. So with a recent discovery from some of our add-on pack authors doing some experiments, we found out that we can substantially reduce the file size of Sim Settlements and the expansion packs, and so we've started to do so. So I was able to shave off, in total, between all of the expansions and everything, I was able to shave off over 200 megabytes from something like the 3-in-1, or if you're just using the core, I was able to shave off about 80 megabytes, which means that for the most part, Sim Settlements Lite is going to be obsolete, just because all of the things that were different in Sim Settlements Lite are still are just gone from the base mod now. So all the files that were bloating it up, and they're already gone from the base mod as well. So it's essentially the same thing. Now the 3.5.2 patch is smaller still than the 4.01, and that's because we've added new code, we've added some new textures, and new stuff to support the new features of 4.0. One that Conqueror uses. So if you don't want that file size from the new Sim Settlements, then you basically can't use Conqueror. But if you want to go to the 4.01 patch, it is smaller than the 4.0.0 patch by a good amount, especially if you're using the 3-in-1. You'll find that you've saved a lot of space. And we have ways we can save more space in the future. We just have to track down some of the old building models so we can convert them over to this new format. On top of that, I was able to also change over the way the interior plots work from Sim Settlements, and the ones in the base mod will now have substantially less object references. And what that means on a technical level is that it will just be faster for them to create their levels, and it won't be as intensive on your system, especially if you're using clutter. So I am going to be updating the Sim Settlements building kit for the add-on pack authors and explaining what they would have to do to take advantage of these same things so that they can reduce the file size and object reference counts in their mods as well. So hopefully just across the board, especially for Xbox players, we can get the number of the size of the files that you're having to commit down by quite a bit. So that's a pretty exciting move for Xbox players. I'm sure on PC, some of you guys are excited to hear that as well, because these downloads can take forever as we're pushing up toward a gig between all of the content we have just for Sim Settlements official stuff, not to mention all of the different add-on packs. So we're going to continue to try and slim down Sim Settlements file size wise and tighten up all of the object reference count so that we can get better performance. So that's definitely on the radar, and we're going to continue to do that. All right, now let's talk exclusively Conqueror. So with the 4.01 patch of Conqueror, we were trying to just focus all on all the bugs that you guys had found. The new content will likely start coming into Conqueror with the next patch, as we have, like I've mentioned in a few videos now, we have tons of Conqueror content content in development and on deck that we have planned for throughout 2019, and we have a little bit of it available for the next patch, and we'll try and continue to pepper more of it within each patch on top of the normal bug fix patches and improvements to Sim Settlements core. So the thing we found in looking at all the bug reports was that most of the issues people are reporting are related to one of 3 issues. So I tackled those 3 issues, and now I'm hoping that that will resolve a lot of your guys' problems. But if you look at the bug fixes list, which, by the way, I think I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but I'll mention again just in case I didn't, the patch notes for Conqueror are separate from Sim Settlements. So in the prior expansion packs, I just merged them all together, and it was one big giant patch note list. But because a lot of players probably are holding off on Conqueror until we add some of the non-raider content, the stuff for that where they can use the system with other factions and things like that, I assume there's a lot of people who are not going to want to have to dig through all this talk about Jammer. So the Sim Settlements patch notes are separated. If you go to simsettlements.com, click on the wiki link, then down on the left-hand side, a little bit lower, you'll find that there's a patches section, and there are 3 links, and it's got the Sim Settlements patches, the archive patches, which are all the notes from before 4.0, and then the Conqueror patches, so you can read each of those notes individually. So the 3 big things we found with Conqueror that were causing problems. Number 1 was an issue with aliases, and aliases are a thing we do in modding just so that you can kind of reference specific things in the game world, and Conqueror was referencing something that a lot of other mods do as well, and when that happens, this is the problem that a lot of the Creation Club content has for some of you guys, where you can't do the Codsworth quest at the beginning, is when too many things are grabbing the same alias, is the game will just fail to start some of those quests. So a lot of people were finding that Conqueror wasn't starting, and you would know, Rick, you can cut back to my boring video now. This menu here of Conqueror here to start up, if you weren't getting that, this is likely the problem you were receiving. It was that the game was preventing Conqueror from launching at all. It was preventing its quests from launching. That should be resolved now. So if you had that problem, you'll want to try and load up another game and then see if you get this menu to come up. The second problem that we were running into was that using this system, that people were finding that they were essentially script overloaded. So there was so much stuff going on from Conqueror doing this startup sequence that they were running into problems later in the game, or they didn't realize that Conqueror was still doing this. So I've added the following. So I'm going to go ahead and run through this menu real quick and say, let's do this. But before I do that, I actually want to show you guys something. There's a new section down here called progress notifications. If you don't like what I'm about to show you because of the immersion factor, you can turn it off down there. But basically what I've added is, whoops, I did mean to enable it. Here we go. I got a little aggressive with my pushing. But if you look in the upper left-hand corner, that will appear if you have HUD Framework installed. If you don't have HUD Framework, instead you will just get periodic updates in notification messages up in the upper left-hand corner. But essentially it tells you the progress of the building phase. It takes a long time, and this is what I think people didn't realize. So a lot of that time is masked if you are doing the opening sequence to Fallout 4, where you're playing through the pre-war and you are going to the Vault 111 sequence and doing the tutorial stuff. And most of this stuff, or a lot of it rather, can finish by the time you get out, especially this first phase, which if you see in the upper left there, it's this placing objects. That can finish relatively quickly, but it's actually a long process because Sim Settlements still has to do things like place NPCs, prepare all of the animation markers, and get all of the plots in place and ready. So it's a long process, and so now you can see when it's done. What I would recommend you do is if you have problems with, for example, any crashing in your game using this system, or you just are finding things unimmersive, what I would recommend you do is play through your opening sequence, and then when you get to the vault elevator, just leave it there until this sequence is done. And that little HUD up there will disappear when it's done. If you're not using HUD Framework, instead a pop-up message will come up that tells you that the sequence is all finished. So that way you know that Conqueror is done doing all of its nonsense in the background, and it won't be overloading your scripting anymore or still processing some things. For example, one of the common issues we had reported was that nothing was being scrapped in the settlements that were being pre-built. Well, that scrapping phase doesn't happen until the very end, and it doesn't happen until after you arrive at those settlements. So if you arrived at a settlement and this phase was still going on, the scrapping wouldn't start, and then the next time you visited, if it still was going, it still wouldn't start. And so that people just felt like it was completely broken. But in reality, there were just so many scripts going on in the background that it just couldn't get to it yet. So that's a lot of those issues, or those two things. And then the third issue people were running into was a problem with Jammer, because he was not correctly going to his outpost. This turned out to be related to the first problem. One of another quest from Workshop Framework was failing to start up due to just all the mod interference with aliases. I've resolved that as well. And so if you found that after you did the first, and spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't started the Raider quest line, but if you found that after capturing your first outpost, Jammer went on a walk and wandered around the Commonwealth instead of to where he was supposed to go, now when you log in, even on those existing saves, it should attempt to move Jammer to the first outpost, which is where he's supposed to live. And if he doesn't, we can give you some console commands on the forums. Feel free to join us over there and we'll try and help you out. But anybody with a new game, you should no longer run into that issue. And so both those three issues ended up causing a lot of other issues. And I also fixed a lot more bugs. If you go look at the Conqueror patch notes, it is pretty enormous, because I've just been grinding away at it, trying to take out as many things as possible. There are definitely still some issues that you guys have reported. I know there's a problem with enslaving with the colors, and that will get fixed in the next patch. And so definitely keep reporting your issues, but I think this 4.01 patch is going to be a huge improvement for a lot of you guys. I've also started to address some of the difficulty with the assaults. I know that it can be frustrating to deal with crappy AI on top of weak NPCs, and we have a great plan for dealing with that long term. In the short term, I've done a few things to help out with that, and so if you want to read through the patch notes, you can learn about those. The simplest one I did was just to reduce the health of the civilians, is because they were a little bit too tanky. But we have a lot of plans about giving you guys more control over your NPCs, about making them more powerful. I will leave you with a couple of notes on that assault system to make your lives a little easier, is that they do level scale, not in the sense that your current recruits will scale up, but future recruits that you gain after your character has leveled to certain thresholds will be higher level. There's essentially, right now there are 4 tiers, and they are approximately at levels 10, 20, 30, and 40 of your character. So as your character gets more powerful, you will recruit more powerful people. And so then those raids automatically become easier, because the civilians do not get any more powerful. They remain weak. So the people that you're dominating will be easier to dominate later on as your character gets more powerful. So this system was definitely not meant to replace your need to level up your character. It still is an RPG. You still got to level up your character. The other side of this is that you can equip those raiders. So after, maybe not at the very beginning of the game before you have your HQ, but as soon as you get your HQ set up, your first outpost, which you can give those raider recruits as much equipment as you like, and they will become much more powerful after that, especially if you give them a decent weapon so they can chew through those enemies a little faster. All right, guys, like I said, we got lots of cool content coming. Definitely keep reporting those bugs, and I hope you all have a much better time after this patch that fixes those core issues. And if not, definitely let us know on the forums. All right, guys, take care and enjoy the mods.